It's Relationship Wednesday, and welcome to the Bad Influence Podcast with yours truly, Bjordan Banderas. Listen to what I must tell you today because it can save your marriage. Most people who say their marriage is struggling are actually describing what happens when two people stop giving everything and start keeping score of who gave less. Oh yeah. You said the vows. You stood in front of the people who matter most to you and made a declaration that was supposed to mean something permanent. Yes, you did. We all did, right? If we're married, we did. And it did mean something permanent on that day, in that moment, when the feeling was high and the commitment felt effortless because everything was still new and the difficulty hadn't fully arrived yet. But the difficulty arrived. Oh, yes, it did. It always does. Don't you lie to yourself. And the ordinary settle in. The repetition, the pressure, the seasons where the marriage asked more than it seemed to be giving back. And somewhere in the middle of ordinary, without a single dramatic moment announcing it, you started calculating how much you're giving versus how much they're giving. Whether the effort is equal, whether you're carrying more than your share. Oh yeah, this happens more often than not. Whether the 50% you're bringing is being matched by 50% on the other side. And that calculation, reasonable as it sounds, fair as it feels, is the beginning of the end of what marriage is actually supposed to be. Oh yeah. Be honest right now. When did the marriage stop being something you give everything to and become something you monitor for balance? When did your partner's effort become a variable you track rather than a gift you receive? When did the question shift from what can I bring today to am I getting enough back? Because that shift is not a small thing. That shift is the moment a marriage stops being a covenant and becomes a contract. You don't want a contract. Because contracts get renegotiated when the terms feel unequal. And renegotiated marriages look functional from the outside. But from the inside, from the place where the real experience of the relationship lives, they feel like two people managing a business arrangement rather than building a life together. And you feel that. Maybe you haven't named it exactly, but you feel it in the distance that exists even in closeness. In the transactions that replace the tenderness. In the way you can be in the same room and feel completely alone inside a marriage that is technically still intact. That feeling is not the marriage dying, and I want you to understand that. That is the marriage asking you to remember what you actually signed up for. Not a split, not a negotiation, not a balanced ledger. Everything. Without everything, every day, without keeping count. The scorekeeping didn't start in this marriage. That needs to land before anything else. You didn't walk into the relationship already calculating. You learned to calculate somewhere earlier. Oh yes, you did. In an environment that showed you, before you had the language to question it, that love has conditions attached. That giving without tracking is dangerous. That the person who gives more ends up with less. So let's find where that started. Yeah. Because the habit of monitoring the balance, of watching the give and take with one eye, even while appearing fully present, that has an origin. Yes, it does. Maybe it was a home where love felt transactional, where affection arrived in response to performance rather than simply because you existed and were worthy of it. where the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally attach conditions so consistently that unconditional stop feeling real. And you absorb the template. Oh, yes, you did. Love is something that gets earned and withdrawn based on the balance of what's being exchanged. And if you give more than you get, you lose. That belief didn't announce itself when you got married. No, it didn't. It just ran quietly underneath the boughs, waiting for the moment when the relationship got hard enough to activate it. Or maybe it came from watching a marriage that modeled the wrong thing. Maybe the marriage you grew up inside, the one that was supposed to show you what committed love looks like, operated on a system of debts and credits, where one person's sacrifice got held over the other's head, where keeping score was the primary language of conflict, where love existed, genuinely existed, but got administered through a ledger that neither person was willing to put down. And you watched that dynamic for years. Oh, yes, you did. You watched two people who love each other exhaust themselves striking the balance instead of building the life. And somewhere in the watching, a conclusion formed that felt like wisdom. It always feels like wisdom, right? Protect yourself. Monitor the gift. Don't let yourself be the one who loses the exchange. And you carry that conclusion into your own marriage. Not as a strategy, as a reflex. Or maybe the origin is more specific than either of those. Maybe you gave everything in a relationship before this one. You went all in, fully, without calculation, without protection, and it wasn't reciprocated. And the pain of that, the specific pain of having poured everything into something that didn't pour back, rewired something in you. Oh, yes, it did. It rewired the giving mechanism, installed a governor on it, a limiter that fires automatically the moment giving starts to feel unequal. Not because you became selfish, because your nervous system decided from real evidence, from real pain, that unguarded giving is a vulnerability that leads to devastation. And it hasn't fully updated that assessment since. Even inside a marriage that is fundamentally different from the situation that produced the wound. Even with a person who is not the person who hurt you. The governor still fires. The calculation still runs. The protection still engages at the threshold where full giving will require full trust. And full trust, after being burned, feels like the most dangerous thing in the world. Oh yeah. Here's what that protection feels like in the body. There is a specific physical sensation that accompanies the moment you start to give more than feel safe. A pulling back that happens below conscious thought. A tightening in the chest that arrives before any reasoning has formed. And the body pulls the giving back to the manageable level. Yes, it does. The level where you're still in the marriage, is still showing up, is still technically present, but not fully. Not with everything. Not with the kind of complete, unguarded, untracked giving that marriage actually requires. And the partial giving produces a partial marriage. And the partial marriage produces the distance you've been feeling. And the distance feels like evidence that the protection was necessary. So the protection tightens. And the giving contracts further. Yes, it does. And the marriage gets a little smaller, a little more managed, a little further from what both of you actually want. And neither of you fully understand why. Because neither of you has traced it back to the place where the scorekeeping was first learned. The scorekeeping lives in your body, not just in the mental ledger you've been running, in the physical experience of being inside a marriage where the giving has been measured rather than free. And your body has been paying for it in ways that show up every day. In the tension, the distance, the specific exhaustion of a relationship that is working hard but not working well. Feel what happens in your chest when your partner does something that registers as less than what you gave last. There is an immediate physical response. Oh yes. A tightening, a closing, a withdrawal that happens faster than thought. And in that moment, your body has already made the decision before your mind has formed the argument. The ledger updated, the balance shifted, the giving contracted to match. That's not a conscious choice. That is a nervous system executing a protection program that runs on automatic. It does run on automatic, and you know it now. And it fires dozens of times across an ordinary week. Every perceived imbalance, every moment that registers as you giving more, the body responds. The chest tightens, the warmth pulls back, and you move through the marriage in a state of low-grade guardedness that never fully releases. Think about the physical experience of being in the same space as your partner on an ordinary evening. Not a conflict evening, not a particularly warm evening, just Tuesday. Is there an ease in your body? A genuine relaxation, the specific loosening that comes from being with someone you trust completely and give to freely? Or is there a management happening? A subtle monitoring of the temperature between you? A low-grade vigilance that never quite lets your shoulders drop all the way. Oh yeah, that happens. And that vigilance has a cost. It costs you the peace that marriage is supposed to provide. Oh yeah, that's exactly why it costs you. The specific peace of two people who have chosen each other completely and feel that choice in their bodies as safety rather than calculation. That peace is not available inside a scorecard marriage because safety requires trust. And trust requires giving without tracking what comes back. And your body knows the difference between the two. Yes, it does. Think about how you feel after the arguments that are really about the ledger. The ones that start over something small but are actually about accumulated imbalance. About all the times you gave and it wasn't matched. All the times you show up and they didn't to the same degree. After those arguments, after the specific exhaustion of fighting about something that was really about the score, feel what that leaves in the body. The hollow tiredness, the jaw that is still slightly set hours later, the stomach that carries the residue of conflict that didn't actually resolve anything because the real issue, the scorekeeping itself, never got named. And tomorrow, the ledger opens again. And the cycle runs again. And the body gets a little more worn by it. Yes, it does. Now, think about the intimacy. The physical closeness that is supposed to be the natural expression of two people who give themselves to each other freely. What does intimacy feel like inside a marriage where the giving has been measured? Is there a fullness to it? Or does it carry the slight weight of the ledger even there? The moment where something that should be pure and free has a transaction underneath it, where giving physically feels connected to the balance of everything else. Your body registers that contamination even when you don't consciously name it. Oh, yes, it does. And it creates a distance in closeness that is one of the loneliest feelings available inside a marriage. Two people physically together, emotionally somewhere else, separated by a scorecard that neither of them agreed to keep, but both of them have been running. Let's hold the mirror up, all the way up. Yeah, it's time for that. Because this is the part where we stop describing the pattern and start looking at what operating a scorecard marriage is actually taking from you. Yes, both of you. From the relationship, from your partner, from the life together you promise each other. Let's start with what your partner experiences on the other side of the ledger. Because there is a person in this marriage who feels the calculation even when you haven't said a word about it. Who can sense the difference between your full giving and your measured giving. They know it, they can feel it, they can sense it. Who knows, not intellectually, but in their body, when they are receiving all of you versus a carefully managed portion of you. And that knowledge does something to a person. Oh, yes, it does. So pay attention. It creates a specific loneliness that is worse than loneliness of being alone. Because you're right there. Physically present, technically committed, going through every motion of a functioning marriage. And still somehow unreachable. It's still somehow behind a glass they can't get through. And they've stopped trying to explain it because explaining it produces conflict rather than connection. So, they've adjusted quietly, without announcement. Yes, they did, and probably you know this now. They've recalibrated what they expect from this marriage. Scale back the hope for the full version, the freely given, unguarded, everything version, and make peace with the managed one. And you've been letting that happen. Not cruelly, not intentionally, but by staying inside the scorecard. By keeping the protection engaged, you've been allowing the person you married to slowly make peace with less than what they deserve. Think about that cost. Not to the abstract marriage, to that specific person. Now, look at what the scorecard is stealing from you. Because this pattern doesn't only damage them, it damages you. Every marriage that operates on a ledger requires an enormous amount of energy to maintain. The tracking, the comparing, the constant low-grade assessment of whether the balance is acceptable. That energy doesn't come from nowhere. It comes directly from the energy that should be going into building something together. Oh, yes, it does. Into the shared projects, the deep conversations, the seasons of genuine partnership where two people face difficulty side by side rather than across from each other. You've been spending the building energy on the accounting. So you're wasting your energy. I just want to tell you that. And the marriage has been getting less of you than it was supposed to get. Not less than your partner deserves. Less than you yourself are capable of giving. And a marriage that gets less than you're capable of giving will always feel insufficient. Not because it is a bad marriage, because it is a partial one. Yes, it is. Now, look at the intimacy, not just physical, all of it. The emotional intimacy, the specific depth of knowing and being known that marriage is supposed to produce over time. Is that deepening in your marriage right now? Or has it plateaued at the level the scorecard allows? Because deep knowing requires deep giving. And deep giving requires the willingness to offer yourself without tracking the return. And the scorecard prevents exactly that. It keeps both of you at the level of what's been exchanged rather than the level of what's possible. And what's possible? The depth of connection available to two people who genuinely give everything without calculation. That is something neither of you has fully experienced yet inside this marriage. And the longer the scorecard runs, the further that possibility recedes. Think about the version of your marriage you imagined when you made the vows. Not the fairy tale version, the real version. The version where two people who chose each other show up for each other completely. Through the hard seasons and the easy ones, through the imbalanced stretches and the abundant ones, without a running total of who gave what. Is that the marriage you're in right now? Or have you built something that looks like it from the outside but operates on fundamentally different terms inside? Be honest. You have to be honest with yourself. Because honesty is the only thing that produces change at this level. And you came to this episode for something real. Not for the version that lets you leave feeling comfortable about where things are. No, not that version. Now, look at where the scorecard leads if nothing changes. Not dramatically. Marriages rarely end dramatically when the cause is this. They end quietly. In the gradual withdrawal of both people into their own corners. In the conversations that stay surface because going deeper requires more trust than the ledger allows. In the slow replacement of partnership with coexistence. And you don't want that. Because it's two people sharing a life in the logistical sense, the house, the finances, the schedule, while the actual marriage quietly empties out. And one day, not with a fight, not with a single defining moment, you look at each other across a room and realize you are strangers who know each other's habits, not enemies, not even unhappy exactly, just separate, living inside the structure of a marriage that the content left some time ago. That ending is not inevitable, but it is the direction the scorecard points. And you've been pointed that way long enough. Oh yes, you have. Don't you lie to yourself. Now, look at what you're withholding from yourself. Because the full giving, the everything, everyday giving, that's not just what your partner needs. That is the only version of marriage that actually makes you feel alive inside it. Half giving produces half aliveness. And you've been living in that half aliveness and calling it a complicated marriage. It's not complicated. It's incomplete. Yes, it is. Incomplete because the part of you that knows how to give without reservation has been sitting behind the scorecard waiting for permission to come all the way out. And the permission was never going to come from them. It was always going to have to come from you. Oh yeah. And today, right now, is when you finally give it. Now, we build the real marriage. Not the one you've been managing, the one you promise. Oh yeah. Because everything we just covered, The scorecard, the distance, the partial giving that produces a partial life. None of that is who you are at your core. That is a protection strategy that outlived its purpose. And protection strategies that outlive their purpose don't deserve your loyalty anymore. They deserve to be retired. So put it on the shelf. So let's talk about what marriage actually is. Not as a concept, but as a daily lived practice. Marriage is not a contract with equal terms. Marriage is a covenant with no terms at all. A covenant says, I give everything regardless of what comes back. Not because I'm naive, not because I have no standards, but because I have decided that this person and this life together are worth my everything. On the days it's returned, and on the days it isn't. That is an entirely different commitment than what the scorecard allows. And it requires an entirely different identity to sustain it. Oh, yes, it does. Not the identity of someone who monitors the balance. The identity of someone who has decided that giving itself is the point. I know, right? Boom. Mind blown. Now let's be precise about what everything actually means. Because everything doesn't mean losing yourself. And I want to make that clear. It doesn't mean having no needs. It doesn't mean accepting mistreatment in the name of unconditional giving. Everything means showing up fully, with your whole self, your whole presence, your whole heart, without the portion being held back as insurance. It means bringing your best to the marriage on the days it feels deserved and on the days it feels unearned. It means making the decision to give before the ledger has been consulted. That one is going to be hard. Before the balance has been checked. Hard. Before the calculation has been run. Oh, I know it is hard. Just giving. Because that is who you decided to be when you made the vows. That's right. Now let's talk about what happens to a marriage when both people operate from that standard. When the scorecards come down simultaneously, when both people stop tracking and start giving, something transforms in the relationship that cannot be produced in any other way. The distance closes. Not because the problems disappear, because the problems stop being fought across a ledger and start being faced side by side. The intimacy deepens, not because everything becomes easier. No. Because everything becomes shared, fully shared, without the portion held back. And sharing at that level creates a bond that managed giving simply cannot produce. The peace arrives, not the peace of nothing being wrong. The peace of two people who have chosen each other so completely that the uncertainty of relationship stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like the natural texture of building something real with another human being. That marriage is not a fantasy. It is the direct result of two people who decided to give everything and actually did it daily without keeping count. That's what you need to do. That's exactly what you need to do. Now, let's talk about the practical shift. Because the shift from scorecard to covenant doesn't happen in a single emotional moment. It happens in the ordinary decisions of ordinary days. It happens in the moment you feel the ledger activate, the moment the calculation starts, and you make a different choice. You give anyway. Not because the balance justifies it, because you decided the marriage is worth more than the protection. That one decision, repeated across hundreds of ordinary moments, is what transforms a managed marriage into a real one. It starts with today, with one act of on-track giving that the ledger will have held back. One moment of showing up fully when the protection said give less. One conversation where you bring everything instead of the calculated portion. And you watch what happens in the room when that giving arrives without conditions attached. You watch your partner receive it. Not perfectly, not with immediate reciprocation, but with something changing in them that only changes when they feel genuinely met. A softening, a returning, a version of them showing up that the scorecard marriage hasn't been producing. And that's exactly what you want in your marriage. Because full giving calls out full giving. Not always immediately, not always perfectly, but consistently, over real time, through real seasons. Full giving from one person in a marriage creates the conditions for full giving from the other. That is the dynamic available to you. It's starting with the next moment you choose the covenant over the contract. Now, let's talk about who you are inside this marriage. Not who you've been operating as, no. Who you actually are. You are the person who stood up and made a promise that had no escape clause. No, it didn't have a escape clause. That promise is still valid. It didn't expire when the difficulty arrived. It didn't get voided by the seasons where the giving felt unequal. It is still the foundation, the original, permanent, everything on the line foundation of the relationship you're in. And the person who made that promise, the version of you that stood there and meant every word, that person is still who you are at the core. The scorecard covered them. But it didn't replace them. No, it didn't. And that person, the one who promised everything, is exactly who your marriage needs you to be right now. Not someday, in the next conversation, in the next ordinary evening, in the next moment the ledger opens and you choose to close it instead. That is the identity from this point forward. Not a spouse who monitors, a partner who gives, not someone who tracks the balance. No, someone who decided the balance is not the point. The point is the person, the life, the thing you're building together that neither of you can build alone. And that thing, that is specific, irreplaceable, only available inside this marriage thing, requires everything you have, every day, without keeping count. Yes, without keeping count. Think about your partner right now. The full version of them. The one that exists when they feel genuinely received, genuinely chosen, genuinely given to without conditions. The version that shows up when the scorecard is gone and what's left is just two people who decided to give each other everything and actually meant it. That version is in there, waiting for the marriage to become safe enough to exist fully. And the marriage becomes safe enough when you stop making the giving conditional on the receiving. When you go first, when you decide unilaterally, without waiting for the balance to justify it, that your marriage gets all of you from this moment forward. That's right. And if this episode hit something real, is something in here, name the distance you've been feeling and show you exactly what's been creating it and what it takes to close it, hit that subscribe button. Because every single Wednesday we come back to this exact work. The work of becoming the partner you promised to be. The work that asks for everything and gives back a marriage that finally feels like what you always knew it could be. This is not a podcast for people who want a comfortable marriage. This is a podcast for people who want a real one. And real marriages are built by people who stopped keeping score and started giving everything. Every day, through every season, without running a toll of who gave last. That is the marriage available to you. Not as an ideal, as a daily practice. One on-track act of giving at a time. One moment of choosing the covenant over the contract at a time. One ordinary Tuesday of showing up with everything you have at a time. And over real time, through the seasons that tested and the seasons that rewarded, a marriage gets built that neither of you could have imagined from inside the scorecard. A marriage that feels like home in the deepest sense. Not because nothing is hard, because both people are fully in it, fully present, fully giving, fully committed to the version of this that requires everything, and decided that everything is exactly what they have to offer. You have everything to offer. You always did. The scorecard just made it feel like a liability rather than the most powerful thing you can bring to this marriage. It is not a liability. It is the whole point. Your giving, complete, unguarded, untracked, is what this marriage was built to receive. And your partner is waiting for it. Oh, yes, it is. Not the measured version, not the calculated portion. All of it. Every day is starting today. Yes, starting today. And remember, the choice is yours.